things that we cannot get away from is the ongoing, unfolding, and ever-confusing story with regards to Ebola. Now, somebody that was on Fox News not long ago and well-spoken about this and other things is a Aviation Crisis Consultant. His name is Ken Jenkins. He's on the Newsmaker line, powered by Kurt Mechanical. Let me bring him up. Ken, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Ken, first of all, from your perspective, are we overreacting? I mean, are people? You were just on a plane today, right?
Yes, sir.
So if somebody coughs or sneezes or wheezes or something on a plane, are we overreacting? Are people worried? Are we making more out of this than we should?
I don't think people are overreacting. I think they're being very cautious. As a matter of fact, the person next to me was coughing during the course of the flight, and I just made sure that, if I went to the restroom, I washed my hands, or if I had antiseptic wipes with me before I ate anything or drank anything, I kind of cleaned my hands. So I don't think so. I think people are reacting normally to a situation like this.
One of the people wrote me last week when we were covering this story, Ken, and they said, everybody was talking about what that the ambulance that they transported the one guy there in Dallas, that ambulance stayed in service for another 48 hours before they actually really cleaned it out. What about the two aircraft that he flew on to get to Dallas, when he came from Africa? What is the procedure? And I really don't know, even with all the flying I've done. What is the procedure for flying? And I mean, because those aircraft would have been used again before they even realized that this guy had been ill.
Sure. And each airline is somewhat different in terms of their, let's say, quarantine or cleanup of an aircraft after an infectious disease is found on board. In this particular case, Mr. Duncan was asymptomatic, so he wasn't contagious. So at that point, I don't know that really anything needed to be done to the aircraft. Now, with that said, each airline does have cleaning, deep cleaning capabilities. It just depends on which station they're in. If it's their major hub, then they certainly would be able to turn a plane a little faster and get it cleaned quicker. If it's an outport, then it might take longer to do that. But in this particular case, I wouldn't think the public would have anything to worry about.
Yeah, so for example, if you were on Southwest Airlines, but you're there at Midway Airport, for them to handle it there is one thing, whereas Tucson, Arizona might be a little tougher.
Exactly right. And something like tuberculosis, for example, or even the flu is spread much more easily, or the flu certainly is, than Ebola. And airlines deal with this kind of thing all the time, when I say all the time, I'm talking about just illness, whether it's someone that's experiencing a diabetic coma, or low sugar and needs insulin, or someone that has a heart attack. The flight attendants and the pilots are well trained in these situations,
right,
provided they're aware of the situation.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it, too. I mean, the more people in the know, the better off things are. I read a story just the other day, Ken. In fact, it might be the one that was attached to some reference to you. But United Flight 703, which was from JFK in New York to Los Angeles, during the course of that flight the other day, a woman on board had flu-like symptoms. In fact, I believe she vomited in one of the restrooms there while she was on board. So when that plane landed in LAX, they actually took it to a remote gate and made everybody wait, and I guess the fire department showed up and other people showed up until they determined that she was not infected with Ebola, and then they got everybody over to the right gate. Now, to some people would say that's overreaction. In fact, I got word that the fire chief out there in Los Angeles, it says everybody's in a panic and it's kind of overblown. But don't you think for the safety of people that sometimes an extra hour or two to find out that nothing is wrong is actually time well spent?
Well, I do. In this particular case, the interesting thing about this is, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, these types of things happen almost daily with airlines. If you think back to 7 or 8 years ago, maybe or so, when the pandemic flu, bird flu,
right,
was really big, there were quite a few times where when an airplane came in, let's say to Dallas or Fort Worth from Tokyo, and somebody was sick, then there was suspected bird flu. And until the Department of Public Health or the CDC clears that passenger or crew member through questioning and whatnot and finding out were they near an impacted area, I think what you saw on that JFK to LA flight is going to continue to happen again, but I'd rather err to the side of caution.
Well, and don't you think, too, and I'm not saying this to be political or anything, I'm truly not, but sometimes you get the president saying one thing and the CDC saying something else. You know, the president even was on a message that was broadcast in Western Africa that said, you know, you can't catch it sitting next to somebody on a bus. And at the same time, CDC is saying, don't take public transportation. So I think because there's so much unknown, I mean, we know that they say it's got to be bodily fluid contact, yet we have this nurse now down there in Dallas who now she has contracted Ebola while she had all the protection on, and they don't know how it is that she got it. That's going to elevate some fears, isn't it?
Well, certainly, and I'm from Dallas, and it certainly piqued my interest when I heard that she was infected, and I certainly wish her and her family the best. At the same time, there is that discussion from the CDC about a breach of protocol, in which case we don't know what that protocol is.
Yeah.
That was breached.
Yeah. Are we convinced that everybody involved knows the protocols? I mean, are they making these things abundantly clear to everybody?
Well, you would certainly think in the hospital environment they are. There was a gentleman from the CDC that I think said it the best, and he said, you know, we're talking about processes here that involve human beings, and human beings have to follow the process precisely. And if they don't, then that's where the human error can step in. And with all of the flights that are coming into the United States and all the measures that are set up, what people need to remember is we're not going to reduce the risk to zero. We're simply reducing the risk.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Get it down to quote somebody else, get it down to something that's a more manageable number. Well, listen,
exactly.
I know that with this one and with other ones, I know you've worked very closely with airlines in very important areas, including contagious diseases. I appreciate you making yourself available to us today. And since you're in Dallas and you deal with airlines, I have a very large confession I'm going to make to you, okay? I used to live in Kansas City, and I'd have to fly down and through Dallas all the time. And when we had flights that went to Dallas from Kansas City every hour on the hour from United, and American Airlines was every half hour on the hour down to Dallas, my secretary knew to always put me on United. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Because American had peanuts, but United had honey roasted peanuts. There's my confession.
All in what you like.
There's my confession for the day. Ken Jenkins, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken Jenkins, crisis consultant for the aviation airline. And